What's up, YouTube? My name is John Jags, and today we are talking all about sequencing layers in After Effects. I'm gonna play this little animation that I made the other day, and my friend who I showed this to challenged me to think about what are some of the ways in which I accomplished this on a technical level, and how did I achieve that creatively. So creatively, I did the animation, but how was that achieved technically? So today we're gonna talk about 3 techniques I used and use frequently when it comes to sequencing layers so you get some cool looking flowy animation, and do it in a way that's either gonna give you more control or do it in a way where you can change things quickly, just in case like a client is like, this is too fast, please change it. And you have hundreds of layers and it's just like, I already made the thing. How am I gonna make the thing for the client, but also do it in a way that's time efficient? So without further ado, let's dive right into After Effects, and I'll show you how to sequence all the things in After Effects. All right, so let's say we're in After Effects and hypothetically, we have, say, 5 to 10 layers that we want to sequence, have things happen to them one after another, sort of oscillate. That's a big word, but remember from pre-calc where you had that sine and cosine graph sort of thing and tangent? Think that. So you can do that with any property in After Effects. Position, scale, rotation, glow, all sorts of things. Now, for this first example, we're just gonna deal with position. So here we have 10 different layers. Each of them is just the same thing, it's just a little square. We're gonna hit P on the keyboard, and we're gonna right-click on the position property, separate dimensions. We're only gonna be working with the position property here, but like I said, you can work on position, scale, rotation, glow, fractal noise, whatever. So, to change this, let's click on the Y, little stopwatch on the Y position, make 1 keyframe. Go forward 10 frames by hitting Shift, page down, and we'll zoom out on our timeline a little bit, and we'll bring that to 440, which will bring it up on the composition, 440, and let's hit page down 1 more time, and we'll go to 640 plus 100, and then we'll go back to its original position by highlighting that first keyframe, Control C, Control V. So now this 1 square on the far left is going to go up, down, and let's give this a little love by hitting clicking on the Y position, hit F9, go into the graph editor really quick. We're not gonna spend too much time on this because we don't got time for that. So let's just play with these handles just for a quick second, make it look a little bit cleaner, and let's see how that looks. That looks a little nice. All right, so to do this manually, what we're gonna do is we're going to hit the Y position property, Control C, Control V, after we select all other layers on our composition, paste. And then what we'll see is that all the layers move in that sequence. So if we click on all of our other layers and we hit P and reveal the Y position, we'll see that, hey, look, those keyframes that we just made are there. Okay, so how do we sequence them in a way that's manual, but we'll have a lot of control? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna hit Alt, page down on the second layer that we want to sequence. Let's just offset it by, let's say, 2 keyframes. So 1, 2. So I'll move the layer forward in time by X amount of times you hit page down when you're holding Alt. So now this layer can't be seen because, unfortunately, if you look at the little block on the timeline, it's not there. So let's just drag that out back to the beginning, and hey, look, it's there. And if we solo the first 2, we can see that they're gonna happen one after another. Great. So let's do that for all the layers. Like I said, move to the next layer. We'll hit Alt 1, 2, 3, 4, and then just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and just count it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then if you hold Shift, it will move it 10 frames forward. And then we'll just keep doing that. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, 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 boom. shift page down. One, two, three. All right, and then last one. Is that offset? Boop, boop. Okay, great. Now, we don't see those layers, so let's just hit Control A to highlight everything, and we'll hold Alt and left bracket. And what that will do is that will bring the endpoint of the layer to where our playhead is. So now we'll see that we can see all the layers. Great. And then if we hit spacebar to play, hey, look, it sequences, it oscillates. So the way you manually sequence things in After Effects is you can basically have, let's say 5 to 10 layers. This is pretty manageable. You hold Alt and then page up or down based on where you want the layer to go in time. So page down is forward and page up is backwards in time. So that's the manual way to do it. Now let's say hypothetically you have 50 layers, 100 layers, then what you can do is some technical things. So that is part 2. For this example, we have a lot more elements on our screen. In fact, we have 30, and if we unhide these layers, we'll see we have 30 different layers. Now, if we use the previous method where we did it manually, that might take a little extra time. And if you're doing client work, you don't want to spend all that much time doing it. Like, obviously do a good job, but you want to be efficient. So how do we sequence things quickly? First, let's do the animation that we want. So let's, not P, let's hit R on the keyboard and rotate the thing. So we'll hit the stopwatch, make a keyframe, move forward 20 frames, shift page down twice. We'll set that to 180. We'll select both of those keyframes, hit F9, give the graph a little bit of love, boop, and boop. And let's see how that looks on our first one, which is top left. Cool beans. Select our rotation property, go back to the regular timeline, select those keyframes, Control C, select all of our layers, and Control V. Now if we look, hey look, guess what? It's doing the thing. And if we just hit N on the keyboard to set our work area, we can see 1, boop, boop, cool. We'll undo that just so our work area is for our entire composition. Now, we want to sequence these, so we could do the manual way, but like I said, we have 30 layers. Let's do this efficiently. So this next step, little important, make sure you select layers in the order in which you want them to sequence. So if you want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, it will sequence in that order, if you select them in that order. Now, if you want 1, 5, 2, 7, like some random order, you'll have to select them in a different order. So first, we're gonna select all of our layers. We'll just do a regular sequence. We'll move forward, let's say, I don't know, 4 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, which technically is 5 frames because when you trim a layer using the Alt and left bracket, or right bracket, right is forwards, right bracket key, it will leave a little extra tail bit on the end. Not sure why. So that is 5 frames, or we could just trim that down to 4 frames. Now we can't see it, but hey, it's still there if we move back in time just a little bit. What we do with all of our layers selected and the animation applied with those keyframes, right click, keyframe assistant. Hey, look, sequence layers. That's convenient. Click, a little window will pop up. We won't worry about this just yet. Click OK. Now we can't see anything except for this little one. This is because our timeline is not showing, or rather showing each shape for only 5 frames. So what we're gonna do is, with all of our layers selected still, hold Alt and then left bracket, and that will bring the playhead, or the endpoint of the layer to our playhead. And then if we go to the end by hitting End, Command on the keyboard and we hit Alt and right bracket, that will show everything. And hey, if we start at the beginning and don't select anything so we can actually see our beautiful animation, hit spacebar. And hey, look, they are doing the sequence thing. Exciting, right? And you could do that for many different properties. Scale, so it would like pop up, so it's sort of like this like pulsating effect, or like the position over as well. More layers. Now, let's undo some of that. And let's say bring it out to, I don't know, 8 frames. So we'll double the time it'll take, but we have that little window. If we hit overlap, we can set how much overlap we want the layers to have with their keyframes. So let's say we just want 2 frames. So this time code here is in frames, so we'll offset it by 2 or overlap by 2. So now we can see that the layers sort of overlap by 2 frames. Do the same thing, in point, left bracket, out point, right bracket, holding Alt, and looks pretty much the same, but you get the idea. Technically, from a mathematical standpoint, it is 2 frames offset, but there you go. You can now sequence layers very efficiently using the sequence layers in the keyframe assistant, which, again, right click, keyframe assistant, sequence layers. Oh, and before I forget, let's undo that. And hypothetically, if you wanted to offset things or sequence things in a random order, so let's just select all these layers. Let's just maximize that. Selecting, still selecting, randomly doing the thing, and let's trim that to, say, just 1 frame. Or no, we'll do 2 frames. Technically 3 frames. Right click, keyframe assistant. Let's turn off the overlap because no point. Now it's kind of all over the place. Hey, what happened? It's selected or sequenced based on the order that we selected. Alt left bracket on the in point of where we want the animation to start. Alt right bracket and unmaximize that window. And by the way, the maximize the portion of the window, that's the tilde key, little squiggly in the upper left-hand side of your keyboard, probably below your space bar. Go to the beginning and, oh hey, we're not playing on the very beginning. Let's just bring those over just a hair. All right, and what happens if we play? Boop, boop, boop. It's kind of all over the place, but you get the idea. You can still use the same sequencing technique with that tool. Now, I have one more to go over. It's a little technical, but I think you'll get it, and it gives you a lot more. If you have to change things quickly, you can do things with just 1 layer as opposed to having to, let's say, undo everything, or let's say you hypothetically closed the application, sent it off to a client. Yeah, well, we'll get there. All right, expressions time. All right, so this next one is a little technical, and by a little, I mean a lot. There's a lot of expressions happening here. So if you don't know much about expressions, I highly recommend checking out the YouTube channel Ukramedia or ukramedia.com. They have tons of awesome examples on how to use expressions and all that. What I'm gonna show you today is what I rigged up, and if you know about expressions, this should make sense, and if you don't, highly recommend checking out the tutorial, and I'll make a separate tutorial on this if there's enough questions about it on how I rigged this up, because this example took a little longer than one individual tutorial should be. So, basically, let's play it back. Whee! So we're doing a little scale and a rotation thing. Now, how was this achieved? So we have our main shape layer in the middle, and that's gonna be looking at the control layer, which is the null layer on top. And we're controlling the X position, the Y position, the scale, and the rotation, which is what we are actually animating. but we could also change the opacity or the time offset. Now that's the key here. So in here, we have our expressions. We'll just get rid of the position. So we're just mainly gonna look at scale and rotation. So what's happening is we have our expressions where we have a variable, and then we have the value. So what each of these layers are doing is we're looking at the layer above it via the index -1. So because the layer index is 3, we're gonna look at the layer before it. So 2, because layer 1 is already looking at the controller, we can look at the keyframes on it and be like, okay, so from here to here, boop, just gonna scale up and scale back down and rotate. And then we can just add a loop expression to that. So loop out, double parentheses, and then just copy that and paste that. So now it just whoop, view, whoop, view, whoop, view. So yeah, that does the thing. So then what if we reveal the next layer? If you look closely, it is offset by just a little bit. And then the way this was achieved is we're looking at the individual layer and using the expression value at time. So what that means is at this time have this value. So how are we defining that? Well, on this control layer here, we have a time offset. So let's just rewrite one of these expressions so you can get an idea of where this went, and you can use this technique in your future videos. So let's just get rid of the scale. So now it's not scaling up. All right, the second one isn't rather. So what we have to do is we have to first set an expression on that and pick whip it to the original layer. So shape layer 1, which is our main layer. Now it's gonna do it in sync. Okay. So next, what we need to do is write the expression value at time. So value at, so the way we do the value at time is we, at the end of the expression, we'll do dot value at time minus, let's say 0.5. So it's in seconds, so a half second later, please have this value. Because we're looking at this one, it'll be like, all right, let's do the thing about half a second later. So if we play it back, boop, boop, beep, beep. Cool. Now the problem with the fixed value in the value at time, the 0.5, is we can't change that. So what we do next is we go down 2 lines or 1 line, doesn't matter. We gotta make a variable. Like I said, if you don't know how to use expressions, highly recommend checking out that other channel I mentioned. I'm not sponsored by them. I've learned a ton from them. So anyways, we'll set t, which will be our variable. The variable could be anything. And then set that to our time offset. Bam. It's not gonna do anything yet because we haven't set, hey, look at t. So instead of 0.5, let's just change that to t. Beep, beep, and let's just set that to 0.275 so we can more accurately see. Beep, 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 beep. Make sense? So it's gonna keep doing that based on this slider. So let's set that back to 0.1. Now we need to have all the layers reference the layer above it. So what we do is we go into the scale expression and set that to index -1. So we're looking at the index, the number of the layer, and then -1, so the one above it. So it's like, hey dude, what are you doing? And then the layer above it is like, dude, I'm just doing this, like a scale. I'm trying to get bigger. And then he does the thing, he's like, oh, okay, I'll do that too. But then the top layer is like, no, wait, not yet. Wait like 0.1 seconds based on that time offset. So with that in mind, you can create complex rigged systems that you can quickly change. Now, why would you use this over, say, the sequence tool in After Effects? I like this method and I've used it on a couple of projects because I can change things very quickly. And if I have to have those layers do a lot of things all at once, like this one card game project I did, I can link that in the description, which basically demonstrates how I use this effect. So now we can just set the time offset to say 0.5. And what's cool about that is I can also animate the time offset. So let's say here, then here I want you to go to say 0.05. Let's just reveal our keyframes. So, now it's doing it slow, and then once we get to the value at time, it'll offset it by significantly less because we're using the slider on the controller. So basically, we have a rig where now we can just copy, or not copy, all the expressions are already rigged. So let's just reveal a couple more layers. Boop, doop, doop, boop, 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 boop. So it's doing the thing, which is exciting. Now, the issue with this method as well is that it is a little bit technically demanding on your computer. So if you do end up using this method, I do highly recommend building a pre-render if you end up having to do a lot of things all at once. So animate it once, then pre-render that as an AVI, and then export that. So without further ado, so that is the expressions method that I use for sequencing things. Little complicated, and if people want to find out exactly how I built this exact setup, I'll make a tutorial on that, but that should give you an idea of how you can rig things using the value at time expression. Now that that's done, and this took way longer to build than I expected, let's wrap this up and yeah. Whoosh. All right, if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I hope these tools, or techniques rather, were useful in helping you understand some ways in which you can get cooler sequences in After Effects, or sequences of layers rather, and hopefully you can use it in fun, creative ways. If you end up using any of these techniques and you would like to, or you end up sharing it and you'd like to tag me, I encourage that and welcome in seeing other people's art and projects and whatever else. So, quick recap. We did the manual method where you can just use the keyboard and mouse and keyframes to move things around using the left and right bracket keys and whatever else. We used the sequence method in After Effects, and then we used some expressions using the value at time expression so that you can actually sequence things. So, let me know which one was your favorite, and I'm gonna go to bed because I spent too much time rigging that thing, but thank you so much for watching. I hope it was worth it. Bye. I will see you in that next video. Bye. This thing goes there.